And joining us now to discuss the latest actions of Israel on the global stage is human rights lawyer, author, filmmaker, and executive director of the Lawfare Project, Brooke Goldstein. Brooke, Israel UN Ambassador Gilad Erdan staged a one-man protest during the Iranian President Raisi's UN address, holding a photo of Mahsa Amini. Israel also trolled the Iranians in the streets of New York. What kind of reaction did it get?
Well, the reaction now is coming in, and I think it's getting a pretty positive reaction. If you are on social media, you cannot scroll without seeing the pictures. And I think that what they did is very creative. I think that any move to bring attention to the human rights violations of the Iranian regime, especially while they are in New York speaking at the United Nations, is good. The world needs to understand what Iran is, how they are torturing and imprisoning their own citizens, how they are treating women, how they are the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So I welcome this initiative, and I actually think there should be more creative initiatives like this.
It was indeed very impressive to see that. Now, Ambassador Erdan's demonstration, it comes ahead of Prime Minister Netanyahu's UN address. Should Israel fear that Iran may try to respond in the same kind?
I don't think Israel has anything to fear from Iran in terms of them responding with any type of protest. The opposite, you just showed in your B-roll that there are hundreds of expat Iranians protesting outside of the United Nations. If anything, Iran should be worried about its public image because people are mobilizing, and allies of the Iranian people, including the Israeli people and the Jewish community, have been mobilizing in the hundreds to support freedom in Iran.
You know, speaking of social media, did you see any responses, any comments about Gilad Erdan being detained after what he did? I mean, anything about that?
Absolutely. I think that people are calling out the hypocrisy of the United Nations. It is totally absurd for them to have detained the Israeli ambassador for holding up a sign. He was not disturbing at all. He was just merely pointing to the fact that Iran does not deserve the podium. I think it's also absurd that the butcher of Iran, which is the other nickname for President Raisi, who is a mass murderer, was given double the allotted time of any other leader to speak. Why is that? Why is the United Nations giving him a platform unchallenged?
Yes, now, Brooke, turning to something else, there have been anti-Netanyahu protests by Israelis and also pro-Israeli American Jews. First, in California, now in New York. Are these protests taking away from Netanyahu's important message relating to Iran and to Israeli-Saudi normalization?
Yes, I want to be very clear. Netanyahu is at the United Nations on the important business of advocating for the safety and national security of Israel and the Jewish people worldwide. And when people are showing up to protest him, when he is at the United Nations on a mission that has nothing to do with legislative issues, pro-reform or anti-reform in Israel, the protests are being seen as anti-Israel. The message that it is sending to the world is that American Jews are being mobilized to protest against Israel. People don't necessarily see this as something more nuanced as just against Netanyahu. And I really agree with what Alan Dershowitz said in his recent op-ed in the Jerusalem Post, that the protesters are giving credibility to Israel's enemies at the United Nations, and they betray the true motive, which is to harm the state of Israel, to harm the people of Israel. At the very best, I think they are naive. They are behaving like, frankly, useful idiots. And at worst, they're really trying to harm the image of Israel. The reform, anti-reform, pro-reform Israel, you don't have to take a position to understand that the optics are absolutely terrible and harmful for the Jewish state at large.
Brooke, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.